Good afternoon. Hello and welcome everyone. Annyeonghaseyo. Namaste. I'm Sachin Satpute. I'm chairman of Indian Chamber of Commerce in Korea. I have stayed in Korea over 8 years in total. So Hanguk Saramieyo. I'm currently president of Novelis Asia. Novelis is the world's largest aluminum rolling and recycling company, and we have 2 manufacturing units in Korea. So on behalf of Indian Chamber of Commerce in Korea, that is ICCK, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. As you all know, ICCK now is almost 10 years young. ICCK's vision is to play a vital and valuable role in the economic development and trade promotion between the 2 countries, Korea and India. ICCK has a steadily growing membership base of around 65 members. We help to connect Korean and Indian businesses to explore mutually beneficial opportunities. As Nangia Anderson is our corporate member, we would like to connect you and with several other companies who wish to explore Indian markets. With a fast-growing economy, skilled workforce, and a huge consumer base, India is a high-potential market. However, this market offers many opportunities, but it comes with its own set of unique challenges. So, this webinar will give you the insights of the current business situation in India and help you to take your business to India, and it also give you the information you need to enter and succeed in this market. The presentation in particular details out the recent new incentive policy for manufacturing companies and tax policy of India. Further, it details out about how foreign companies are taking advantage to shift part of their supply chain to India from China. It also details out advantage India provides in comparison to other countries, making it a favorable destination for foreign companies. So thank you, Kamsamida, and over to you, the speakers from Nangia Anderson.
So, good afternoon, everyone. We are trying to present a presentation on how manufacturing companies are taking advantage on the latest reforms that the Indian government has taken for shifting part of their supply chain from other global destinations such as China, etc., to the Indian market, and what opportunity the Indian market today provides for this shift. So moving on, today what we all would be covering would be how India is the land of multiple opportunities, why India is covered as a growing business hub, what could be the key sectoral opportunities and the key sectors that Indian market is attractive. Along with that, we would also be covering the key incentive policies and the tax reforms that have taken place in the country for attracting foreign investors, and some of the case studies of how already a few of the companies have started moving their supply chain from China to India.
네, 안녕하세요. 저 인도 난기아 앤더슨의 박성준입니다. 이런 식으로 7화급 난기아 파트너랑 4층 가급 파트너가 영어로 발표를 하고 제가 간단하게 요약을 하도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 저희가 아까 이제 말씀을 해주셨지만 저희가 발표할 주제는 중국에서 인도로 생산 공장이나 이런 것, 이 거점을 이전하는 것으로 내용을 갖고 있고요. 주요 사항으로는 왜 인도가 매력적인 기회의 땅인지에 대해서 말씀을 드릴 것이고, 그리고 인도가 성장하는 비즈니스 허브로서 변화를 하고 진행을 하는 점들, 이에 관련해서 인센티브나 조세 개혁에 대해서 말씀을 드릴 것이고요. 그 다음에 인도에서 좋은 투자 기회인 산업 분야들에 대해서 설명을 좀 드릴 거예요. 그리고 그다음에 이 생산 거점을 중국에서 인도로 이전한 기업들에 대해서 약간 이제 예시를 들어서 말씀을 드릴 계획입니다. Okay, Chirag, let's move on.
So now, just to give you a brief about the Indian economy. In today, the Indian economy is the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a GDP of 2.9 trillion. The government has projected in the next 5 years to make this a target of 5 trillion economy. And that is one of the reasons why the government is taking multiple reforms for the Indian population. In terms of investment, most of the sectors are pretty much open for foreign investment in India, which has led to an increase in the FDI environment coming to India. One of the major advantages that India holds is the growing middle class, which is more than 500 million people in today's time, and that number is bound to grow. So India itself as a country, it is a huge consumption destination, and considering that their domestic consumption is so high, a lot of MNCs are taking that as an opportunity to enter the Indian market. Apart from that as well, the low-cost labor is one of the major advantages to a manufacturing company compared to other destinations. You also have a rising youth population, which is providing you with talent at a very cheap cost compared to other destinations.
Chirag, did you move the slide?
그래서 지금 방금 말씀한 이제 광활한 기회 땅 인도 슬라이드에 관해서는요, 인도는 일단 아시다시피 세계에서 가장 빠르게 경제 성장을 하고 있는 국가 중에 하나입니다. 뭐 현재는 지금 코로나 때문에 약간의 어려움을 겪고 있지만 다른 나라들과 똑같이 겪고 있지만 인도 정부나 이제 국제 기관들에서 조사하고 이제 관측한 바로는 내년에는 다시 정상 궤도로 복구를 할 거라고 예측을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 오른쪽 아래에 표를 보시다시피 인도는 세계에서 가장 많은 젊은 인구를 보유하고 있고요. 그리고 그 젊은 인구들이 또 세계에서 가장 많은 대학 졸업자들을 배출을 하고 있습니다. 그것으로 인해서 인도 내에서 기업들이 고학력의 노동자들 그리고 숙련된 노동자들을 저비용으로 고용하기가 훨씬 수월한 편이고요. 그리고 인구가 전 세계에서 두 번째로 많은 나라기 때문에 굉장히 거대한 내수 시장을 갖고 있습니다. 그리고 이 내수 시장은 표에서 보시기와 같이 중산층과 상류층의 숫자가 굉장히 증가할 것으로 예측이 되고 있고 증가하고 있습니다. 반면에 빈민층은 감소를 하고 있고요. 그렇기 때문에 구매력을 가진 소비자들이 상당히 더 앞으로도 늘어날 것으로 예측이 되고 있으며 내수 시장이 점점 더 거대해질 것으로 관측되고 있습니다. Okay, Chirag?
Yeah. Moving on, why in today's times that India is being considered as a growing business hub, and what are the advantages that India has as a country, and what are the latest tax reforms that they have brought about. So,
Chirag, the slide is...
India has a liberal FDI and foreign trade regime. 95% of the sectors in India, whether it's automobiles, whether it's anything related to manufacturing, whether it's chemicals, whether it's food processing, whether it's infrastructure, construction, EPC, all of these projects are open for foreign direct investment without any government permission. So any foreign company who wants to enter the Indian market can enter without any hassles. The government, we will also talk about the Make in India project that the government started in 2014. The tax reforms that have taken place in the last couple of years, the incentive policies that the government has introduced, also what government has done to fast track a lot of big projects that where foreign companies are facing problems, and now the government is stepping in to help them out. Why India is covered as a global export hub, and the liberalized labor laws that the government has over the last few months tried to bring in.
그래서 인도가 성장하는 비즈니스 허브로서 역할을 하기 위해서 인도 정부에서는 해외 직접 투자 FDI라고 하겠습니다. FDI에 대해서 상당 부분의 산업 분야를 오픈을 했습니다. 자동 루트로 정부의 승인이나 허가가 필요 없이 진출할 수 있도록 오픈을 하였고, 네이키드 인디아라는 정책을 통해서 제조 산업에 대해서 글로벌 허브로 발전하기 위한 정책을 추진하고 있으며, 또 높은 수준의 산업 인프라 구축을 위해서 노력을 하고 있고, 또 조세 개혁을 통해서 외국 기업이나 인도 국내 기업들이 더 수월하게 세금 혜택을 받으며 사업을 하기에 용이할 수 있도록 노력하고 있습니다. 그리고 아까 말씀드렸듯이, 시라가 말씀드렸듯이 인센티브 부분에 관해서 특히나 이제 제조업을 집중을 하고 있기 때문에 그 부분에 대해서 많은 혜택을 제공을 하고 있고요. 이 부분은 아래 다음 내용에서 다루도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 프로젝트 인프라 발전을 위해서 거대한 프로젝트들을 많이 진행을 하고 있는데, 이전에는 조금 이제 시간과 절차가 복잡하게 되면서 외국 기업들이 프로젝트를 받아서 시행하기에 조금 어려움이 있었는데, 이거를 패스트 트래킹 시스템을 도입을 하면서 훨씬 수월하게 할 수 있도록 하였습니다. 그리고 완화된 노동법으로 유연성을 주고 글로벌 수출 허브로서의 역할을 하기 위해서 또 노력을 하고 있습니다. 다음 장에서 자세하게 설명드리겠습니다.
So as you would see, India has considerably done a lot for businesses in terms of easing how to do business in India. And over the last couple of years, they have moved up the ease of business doing ranking as well by 79 places, and now it stands at 63, which we expect to improve further over the coming years. As I was mentioning, India has a liberal foreign direct investment regime, and 100% foreign direct investment is allowed into the manufacturing sector. A couple of recent reforms that the government has taken place, even under the defense sector, where defense manufacturing was restricted only to Indian companies, has now been opened up for foreign companies setting up defense manufacturing in the Indian market. Now, foreign direct investment is allowed up to the extent of 74% in India. You also have liberalization of the FDI regime in single brand retail, which is now 100% allowed. And we've seen a lot of Korean companies as well that have entered the Indian market in this by taking advantage of this particular regime. So you have a more Pacific that is now present completely in India. You have their brands such as Innisfree that's present in India. While the larger companies, Samsung, LG, Hyundai, all of these companies have been considerably investing a lot in India. Hyundai is now the second largest automobile company in India after its expansion. I hope everyone can see the slide. Sachin, just wanted to confirm.
Yes, Chirag, we can see.
Yeah. The typical business models that companies, when they are entering the Indian market, usually look at are either setting up 100% fully owned subsidiary in India, which is owned by the global parent company. A lot of multinational companies also look at entering by way of joint venture when they are looking to explore the market, or in case they want to provide their technology and leave the manufacturing to the Indian partner. So if you would notice, a lot of Japanese partners in India actually carry out their business models through a joint venture, while a lot of Korean companies would either be forming their own 100% wholly owned subsidiary, or maybe a joint venture within another Korean partner or an Indian partner.
네, 그래서 이번 슬라이드 관해서는 인도는 최근에 사업하기 좋은 국가로 79위에서 현재 63위로 상승되어 랭킹되어 있고요. 그리고 제조업 관련해서는 100% 자동 루트로 정부에서 허가를 해주고 있습니다. 모든 분야는 아니지만 95% 산업 분야에 대해서 100% 제조업 자동 루트가 허가가 돼 있고, 이에 따라서 삼성이나 LG, 현대 같은 기업들을 예로 들 수 있습니다. 그 다음으로 방위산업 분야는 기존에 49%까지 허용을 하였으나 이번에 74%까지 증가하여 허용을 하고 있으며, 단일 브랜드 소매 분야에 대해서도 완화가 되어 100%로 지금 자동 승인이 허가되고 있습니다. 이에 따라서 아모레퍼시픽에 이니스프리 같은 브랜드들이 들어오고 있으나 멀티 브랜드 리테일 같은 경우에는 아직까지 오픈되어 있지 않습니다. 그래서 한국의 뭐 이마트라든지 미국 월마트 이런 것들이 인도에서는 찾아볼 수 없습니다. 그리고 일반적인 사업 모델로 저 프레젠테이션에 나와 있듯이 전액 출자 자회사와 그리고 합작 투자를 위한 법인 설립, 그리고 위탁 제조사, 이 세 가지 형태를 일반적으로 해서 진출을 하게 되는데요. 전액 출자 자회사의 경우에는 95%의 기업들이 비공개 유한회사, 프라이빗 리미티드 형태로 진출을 하고 있으며, 유한 책임 파트너십, 리미티드 라이abili티 파트너십에 같은 경우에는 회계법인이나 컨설팅 같은 전문적인 사업을 하는 기업들이 파트너십을 통해서 진출을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 아까 이제 치라그 파트너가 말했듯이 일본 기업들 같은 경우에는 합작 투자, 조인트 벤처를 통해서 많이 진출을 하고 있고요. 한국 기업들은 전액 출자 자회사로 보통 인도로 진출을 하고 있습니다. 현재 2019년 6월까지 인도에 진출한 한국 기업의 숫자를 보면 한국수출입은행에서 조사한 바에 따르면은 1200개 미만의 회사가 지금 현재까지 진출해 있고, 앞으로도 매년 계속 꾸준히 증가할 거로 예측되고 있습니다.
Moving on to the Make in India India. So the government in 2014 had introduced the Make in India project, which the main reason of moving to the Make in India project was to provide impetus to the manufacturing destination and try and see if a lot of manufacturing companies around the world in various other countries would move to India due to the advantages that India
There are the
carries.
slide, it's still on the previous slide. Yeah.
So the aim of Make in India project was to attract investments in 25 priority sectors that the government had identified. Some of these sectors were automobiles, electronics, food processing, textiles, media and entertainment, chemicals, oil and gas, and mining. So some of these sectors were those. Since 2014, these sectors have attracted over $350 billion of foreign investment into India, where a lot of foreign companies have over the years started investing in the Indian market. One of the biggest foreign direct investments in the last couple of years was done by Kia, where they entered the Indian market and they had committed over $2 billion in the Indian market. Kia is now already one of the top leading auto manufacturers in India, and they have one of the largest manufacturing facilities that they have set up, which commenced production last year. Apart from that, in last year itself, India recorded one of the highest FDI inflows of over $75 billion, which is a huge amount. You have Google that has committed over $10 billion to invest in the technology sector. You have Schneider that just did one of its biggest acquisition in India of $2 billion. You have Samsung that has recently started shifting one of their major manufacturing facilities from China to India with investment commitment of over $1 billion in this year itself. The government has also opened up other sectors such as railways, which were run completely by the government. So operating private trains, manufacturing of locomotives, So the government is trying to open more and more sectors for providing a shift to companies to shift from other countries to India as a manufacturing destination.
네, 메이크 인 인디아 정책에 관해서 간단하게 소개드리겠습니다. 메이크 인 인디아는 2014년도에 모디 정부에서 발표하고 시행한 정책으로 인도를 제조업의 중심지로 만들고 제조업의 GDP 기여도를 25%까지 끌어올리기 위한 육성 정책입니다. 따라서 내수 시장과 수출 시장에 대해서 활발한 확장을 원하는 목표로 하고 있으며 또 그에 따른 고용 창출의 목적을 두고 있습니다. 또 외국인 투자 유치를 위해서 절차 및 제도의 간소화 그리고 사업 용이성을 증가시키고 여러 가지 인센티브 등을 제공하면서 현재까지도 정부에서 꾸준한 노력을 하고 있습니다. 오케이.
So we now come to the tax reforms. So as you would all know that tax is one of the key criteria for any foreign company to decide where to make an investment. Historically, the tax rate in India have been quite high. The tax rate was as high as 34%, which was not comparable to other countries in this region. And therefore, it was seen that a number of investments which could possibly have come to India may have gone to other countries like Vietnam, Indonesia. Therefore, the government, in its endeavor to promote foreign investment in India and in their focus on Make in India, last year reduced the corporate tax rate to 17% for manufacturing companies, which is a huge cut from the earlier 34%. Even for companies which are not into manufacturing, the tax rate is now around 25%. So on the manufacturing side, if you compare the tax rate of 17% with other countries which are possibly looked as alternate investment destination by companies, let's say Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, these all countries are in the range of 20 to 25%. Even Korea, we understand the tax rate is in that range of 25%. So effectively, India is now a very competitive country in terms of providing a corporate income tax rate of only 17%. So what this means is the effective income which is generated for a shareholder or a foreign investor has increased manyfold. Now, instead of paying taxes to the government, the entire amount can be distributed back as dividend to the shareholder. So this is one key tax reform which happened last year, and this is effective after 1st October 2019. The companies which have been incorporated after 1st October 2019 and they initiate manufacturing by March 2023. And therefore, in the last 6 months to 9 months, we have seen a lot of interest coming from companies interested in setting up manufacturing entities in India. The next one is related to GST. While it has been almost 3 years now that GST or Goods and Services Tax was introduced in India, prior to that, there were a number of laws which covered indirect taxes both at the central, which is the federal level, and at the state level. And credit was not available for one tax against the other tax. What it meant was that in the supply chain for any company, there were many tax leakages, which meant the eventual cost of product for the consumer went up and the effective profit for the company went down. So after 2017 and introduction of Goods and Services Tax, India is now one nation, one tax. So the entire nation is now covered by Goods and Services Tax, and tax paid at one leg of the transaction is available as credit on the subsequent leg of the transaction. Thereby, it is a complete pass-through of tax, and only incremental value addition at the subsequent level is something on which you pay goods and services tax. This is similar to the VAT or GST in many countries. Dispute resolution or litigation is again one of the factors which in the past has been a shortcoming in India. However, the government in the last year or so has taken many big steps in their endeavor to reduce litigation in India and to improve dispute resolution. They have come out with amnesty schemes. They came out with a scheme last year wherein taxpayers could settle all their past disputes relating to old indirect taxes, which was called service tax and excise tax. And now this year the government has come out with a scheme wherein taxpayers can approach and settle all their income tax disputes by only paying the amount of tax, and the government will allow a waiver of interest and penalty. As a result of which, many foreign companies who had litigation in India have gone ahead and taken that option and settled their disputes. So this is also one of the steps, an initiative from the government to demonstrate their intention to make India a tax-friendly country and promote foreign investment in India. In the same breath, now the entire world is covered under transfer pricing regulations. Be it any country across the world, there is something called a transfer pricing rule which applies. What it basically means is that all transactions between group companies or related parties have to be at a fair value, at an arm's length price. And at times it is seen that there could be a dispute in assessment of what is a fair value for a particular transaction. So there is a robust advanced pricing agreement arrangement which exists in India, where as a foreign company you can approach the tax authorities upfront with your assessment of the arm's length price, and after a mutual discussion and explanation, price will be agreed which is acceptable both to the tax authorities and to the company. So this reduces any subsequent opportunity of litigation and gives you certainty in terms of tax costs in India. The last one is a taxpayer charter. So the government has repeatedly said that it wants the tax system to be honest, transparent, accountable, and therefore it has come out with a taxpayer charter which lays down the standard services which the tax department is expected to provide. There are 14 commitments from the side of the tax department and a few expectations from the taxpayer, that the taxpayer will timely file its tax returns and there will be no non-compliances. But it is primarily aimed at removing any harassment of the taxpayer and bringing more efficiency in the working of the tax department. The tax department in India has also come out with a new scheme called faceless assessment scheme. Historically, once you file a tax return in India, which is an annual feature, there is an audit which is conducted by the tax authorities. As a part of that audit, taxpayer either itself or through its authorized representative was required to physically go and meet the tax authorities and present its case. And there were occasions when it was felt that the taxpayer was getting harassed. So the government has now completely removed any sort of physical meeting between the taxpayer and the tax authority. What it has also brought in is that the person on the other side in the tax department who looks at the case will not even know the name of the taxpayer. And in that sense, it will be a complete fair assessment from the tax authorities side of a particular transaction or a case. And therefore, any audit or assessment by the tax authorities will be very transparent and fair and reasonable. So all these steps by the government of India are aimed at bringing in a very, very tax-friendly and efficient system in India. and to help foreign companies invest in India without fearing about any substantial tax costs that they may incur in India.
이번 조세 개혁에 관해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 법인세 인하에 관련해서는 인도 정부에서 최근 제조업 촉진을 위해서 2019년 10월 1일 이후 작년이죠. 그래서 올해부터 신규로 설립되는 제조업체들 계획을 하고 계신 분들은 무조건 해당되는 부분입니다. 그래서 신규 설립되는 제조업체들에 대해서 기존의 약 34%의 법인세를 최저 17%로 세율을 인하하였습니다. 이 조건을 충족하기 위해선 설립 후에 2023년 3월 31일 이전까지 생산을 가동해야 한다는 조건이 있습니다. 그리고 추가적으로 베트남과 인도네시아 등과 경쟁력을 늘리기 위해서 법인세를 인하하였고, 비제조업 기업들 포함들도 이제 25%까지 법인세가 인하되었습니다. 정부에게 세금을 내는 지출보다 배당금 등의 형태로 본사 기업이 더 많은 이득을 볼 수 있게 하며 해외 투자와 이제 생산 거점 이전을 유치하기 위해서 이런 노력을 하고 있다는 것을 알고 있습니다. GST 관련하여서는 2017년도에 그렇게 오래되진 않았습니다. 2017년도에 인도의 정부에서 GST를 도입하면서 그 이전에 기업들이 겪던 어려움, 그 이후로는 각 주별로 상이하게 책정되고 적용되던 간접세를 이번 GST로 인하여 통합하여 동일한 세율을 적용을 하고 주별로 상호 연계가 될 수 있도록 만든 제도입니다. 이로 인해서 복잡하고 어려웠고 그렇기 때문에 새어나가던 세금들을 줄일 수 있었고 기업들에게 훨씬 수월한 사업 환경을 제공하고 있습니다. 이 GST는 다른 국가들의 VAT나 GST와 동일하다고는 할 수 없지만 매우 유사한 형태입니다. 다음으로 분쟁 해결 및 암네스티 제도에 관련해서 말씀드릴 수 있는 것은 작년에 시행된 제도로 소득세 및 간접세 등의 조세 소송을 좀 더 신속하게 해결을 할 수 있도록 하는 제도입니다. 이로 인해서 소송에 대해서 많은 시간과 비용을 투자하면서까지 제대로 해결이 되지 않았던 외국 기업들이 커다란 혜택을 받을 수 있습니다. 아래 Advanced Pricing Agreement, APA 같은 경우는 이전 가격 사전 합의 제도로 인도에서 이 이전 가격 사전 합의 제도를 도입함으로써 그룹 회사와 인도에 나와 있는 자회사 그들 간의 거래에서 생길 수 있던 어려움과 복잡함을 좀 수월하게 해결할 수 있도록 하였습니다. 납세자 헌장회 같은 경우에는 요것은 납세자들에 대해서 조금 어려운 문제가 있었는데 사침 가급 파트너께서 말씀하셨듯이 Faceless Assessment, 비대면 평가라는 제도를 도입을 하게 되면서 이전에 납세자들이 직접 세무기관을 방문하여서 평가를 받아야 됐는데 이에 따라서 부패나 이제 비공정성이 상당히 위험도가 높았습니다. 근데 이렇게 비대면 평가 제도를 시행하게 되면서 직접 찾아가거나 가는 데에 들어가는 비용과 시간을 줄일 수가 있게 되었고 세무기관에서도 공정성과 효율성을 상당히 향상시킬 수 있는 기회가 됐습니다.
So moving on to the incentive schemes, the central government in the last few months has brought about many incentive schemes to promote manufacturing in the Indian market. One of the recent incentive schemes was brought about for electronic phone manufacturing companies. And the main reason of these incentives was to promote phone manufacturing and create India as a global hub for smartphones in India. The government promoted a scheme called the PLI scheme, which was a production-linked incentive scheme for phone manufacturing, where 5 global firms actually applied for these schemes. And Samsung, so the likes of Samsung, Apple were the 2 big companies, and a few Indian companies applied. What the government has said that any incremental sales these companies do once after filing for an application, they will provide a refund of 4 to 6% of sales to these companies in the coming years over a period of time. So the scheme, the government had set an outlay of $6.5 billion as an incentive to these phone manufacturing companies over the next 7 years. This scheme was only for a short duration of period of time for 4 months that it was opened, but the government, after seeing the response, the government has also brought about a similar scheme for the pharmaceutical sector for manufacturing of bulk drugs and medical devices, where an incentive of 5 to 20% of any incremental sales of that they do will be provided as a benefit or as a refund, if I would like to say, to these companies over the next 6 years. So any greenfield projects, any new projects that are being set up in India, the government in this particular sector and which qualify for the products under the pharmaceutical sector or the medical devices, the government would be providing as an incentive to boost manufacturing in the Indian market. So India as a destination is already one of the biggest exporters of pharmaceutical products to the developed markets. And the government, considering that this sector is established, the government is trying to promote this sector so that more MNCs, more multinational companies look to shift their manufacturing or their supply chain in the Indian market. Another benefit that the government brought about was a scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors. The government was providing an incentive. In this scheme is open for 3 years, and the government would be providing an incentive of any capital expenditure that these companies do, and the incentive could go as high as up as 25% of the capital expenditure that they do. Some of the products that could qualify under electronic components would be your microelectric components, your PCB, chip modules, semiconductor devices which are related to electronic facility, LEDs, OLEDs, compound semiconductors. So the government has tried to promote the electronic sector over the coming years. So any company over the next 3 years that is looking to enter the Indian market would be eligible to take a benefit and advantage of this scheme. The investment range in this particular scheme is as low as $1 million and goes up to as high as $200 million, depending on what product the company is entering the Indian market. So these two schemes that I was talking about, one was the mobile manufacturing. Now all of these electronic components are ancillary industries to this particular sector. So to promote the electronic sector, the government has come out with these two schemes, and the government is now, after obviously providing the incentives, they're also looking to improve the electronic infrastructure in India. And because of that, the government is trying to promote an electronic manufacturing cluster where a hub for Digital India, for promoting these electronic companies that are looking to enter the Indian market, a common facilities centers, financial assistance would be provided. So the government is trying to get companies to make these electronic manufacturing clusters, and any companies that are looking to create this infrastructure will also get an incentive from the government and will also include financial assistance for providing these facilities. So these three schemes are all related to the electronic supply chain to create from top to bottom all the products that are covered in this particular sector will now be provided an incentive going forward. Another scheme that the government has brought about is for creating India as an export hub. Currently, until 2020, till December 2020, any exports that are done by companies that are present in India are usually eligible for an export incentive by the government. The government has brought about a new scheme which will start from 2021, which is called the remission of duties and taxes on export products. So companies that have set up global export hubs into India, or Indian companies that are providing exports to overseas destinations, will now be all of their inputs that they procure for the manufacturing, there would be a scheme for reimbursement of any local taxes, duties that are levied at central or state level, and these would be refunded as a credit to the companies directly in their bank accounts. More details of this scheme are supposed to come out very soon, but the scheme would be effective from 1st January 2021. The main reason is to promote India as a manufacturing hub, and obviously to promote exports, considering that India is a growing export market, and because of the advantages that India carries compared to other destinations, a lot of multinational companies over the last many years have already set up their manufacturing chains. Another scheme that the government has provided is called the SEIS scheme, which is mainly for outsourcing companies that have set up global outsourcing centers in the Indian market. So that is mainly related to the service sector. The government usually provides a 5% refund of their export services that an Indian company, whether it's owned by MNC or owned by Indian, is provided. So these are mainly for back office services or technology services, engineering services. India as a country also has a SEPA concessional agreement with Korea, where a large number of products are covered under this agreement and are provided concessional rate of import duties when any product or any raw material is imported for the purposes of manufacturing. So India has a SEPA with few countries, and Korea is one of them, considering a large number of raw materials are still imported from this market for many sectors.
네, 중앙정부 인센티브에 관련해서 간단하게 요약드리겠습니다. 일단 프로덕션 링크드 인센티브 제도 같은 경우에는 소위 PLI 제도라고 하고요. 생산 연계 인센티브 제도입니다. 이미 많은 뉴스로 소식을 접하셨겠지만 이제 삼성 같은 경우에 이제 모바일 PLI 제도를 신청을 하여서 승인을 받았고 그대로 진행을 하고 있는 것으로 알고 있습니다만, 아쉽게도 요 모바일 핸즈프리 PLI의 경우에는 이미 완료가 되었고, 지금 여기에 소개되어 있는 벌크 드러그 의약 제조 PLI 그리고 의료기기 관련 PLI는 최근에 다시 이제 신청 접수를 받고 있습니다. 이 신청 접수는 4달 동안 진행이 될 거고요. 그리고 이 인센티브 제도 같은 경우에는 의약 제조는 주요 시원료나 의약품 매개체, 활성 의약품 성분 제조 촉진을 위한 재정적 지원으로 순매출의 5%에서 최대 20%까지 인센티브 환급을 제공을 하게 되어 있습니다. 그리고 의료기기 관련 PLI의 경우에는 의료기기 제조를 촉진하기 위해서 재정적인 인센티브로 매출 증가분의 5%의 인센티브를 제공하고 있습니다. 앞으로 이 인센티브는 향후 6년 동안 유지가 될 것으로 발표되었습니다. 다음에 아래 스펙스 같은 경우에는 직역하자면 전자부품 제조 및 반도체 촉진 제도로 해당 품목들이 정해져 있습니다. 이 제도에서. 해당 품목들에 따라서 적용할 수 있는 최소 투자금이 또 지정이 돼 있으며, 이 최소 투자금을 만족시킬 시에 지출된 자본의 최대 25%까지 인센티브, 환급을 받을 수 있습니다. 앞으로 지금부터 3년 동안 이 제도에 대해서 혜택에 대해서 접수를 받고 있으며, 항목들 같은 경우에는 반도체 부품이나 예를 들어 LED 그리고 칩 모듈 등 같은 부품들이 있습니다. 굉장히 많은 수의 부품이 있기 때문에 추후에 저희에게 연락을 주시면은 이 제도들에 대해서 그리고 이 항목들에 대해서 투자금에 대해서 정리된 자료들을 공유드리도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 세 번째로는 전자 제조 클러스터 정책인데요. 이것은 디지털 인디아, 인도 정부에서 추진하고 있는 디지털 인디아와 메이크 인 인디아 시행에 따라서 인도를 전자제조 허브로 만들기 위해 전자제조 클러스터 프로젝트 및 공통시설 센터에 대한 재정적 지원으로 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있습니다. 이 세 가지가 전부 다 전자 부품, 전자 제조업에 관련해서 인도 중앙 정부에서 추진을 하고 홍보를 하고 있는 제도들이고요. 그리고 네 번째로 수출품 세금 감면 제도, RODTEP, 수출품 세금 감면 제도로 현재 다른 메커니즘에 따라서 환급이 이뤄지지 않고 있는 중앙, 그리고 주, 그리고 지방 레벨의 세금, 관세, 추가 부담금에 대한 환급 제도입니다. 이것은 또 최근에 발표가 되었고요. 올해 최근에 발표가 되었고, 이 제도는 내년부터 2021년부터 시행이 될 것으로 예상하고 있습니다. 그리고 아까 슈라그 난기아 파트너께서 하나 더 추가를 해주신 것이 아웃소싱 업체들에 대해서 5%의 환급 제도 인센티브가 있다는 것도 참고하실 수 있겠습니다. Next.
What Chirag and Sungjun just explained was incentives which are provided by the Indian federal government. But in addition to the incentives provided by the government at the center, there are various other incentives which are provided by the state governments. So India has around 30 states or provinces, as you may understand, and various states have their own policies to incentivize foreign investors if they invest in their particular state. Generally, the incentives are of three types. One is capital linked incentive, which means a certain percentage of the capital investment that you make in the plant and machinery is refunded back in the form of a cashback or a refund. Second, and the most significant incentive is usually a sales linked incentive. What this means is that the sales that you make within that state and the state's GST that you pay on that, a certain percentage of that state GST is refunded back to the company. This is usually a very significant amount and helps companies to effectively reduce their cost of investment in India. The third incentive is generally expenditure linked. So expenditure which is made by the company on electricity, interest on loans, some power tariffs, stamp duty, these kind of expenditures also are either exempted or refunded in the form of a cashback by the government. There is something which is called a customized incentive package. So these packages are given by respective states based on the location of that manufacturing unit within the state, the amount of investment, and potential employment generation. So there is a standard policy by way of which you know that if you invest in a particular location, given your size of investment, what is the expected incentive that you will get from the state. But all the states usually have a threshold limit. For example, some state could have a $200 million limit depending on how developed that state is. Some state could have a lower or a higher limit. So if the size of the investment is beyond that threshold, then in addition to the standard policy, you can simply approach the state government and negotiate a customized package for yourself, wherein you can request state government what are the incentives that you want from the state government, and the state government will review your application and then allow you certain incentives. So in the past, the investment made by Kia or Samsung, these have been huge investments and have generally been made after due discussions with the state governments.
네, 아까 전에 소개드렸던 중앙정부의 인센티브와 별개로 또 각 주정부에서 인센티브들을 제공을 하고 있습니다. 각 주정부에서 제공을 하고 있기 때문에 모든 주가 동일한 인센티브를 제공을 하는 것은 아니지만 기본적으로 세 가지 형태의 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있습니다. 캐피털 링크드, 자본 연계 관련된 인센티브인데 이것은 투자 금액의 총액에 따라서 환급을 받을 수 있는 제도입니다. 보통의 투자 형태는 건물 및 기계에 관련돼서 나오고 있으며, 그 다음으로 지출 연계 expenditure linked incentive는 이제 간단하게 소개드리자면은 전기세 면제, 그리고 전력세나 인지세 등에 대해서 면제나 환급을 해주는 제도, 그리고 이자 보조금 제도 등이 있습니다. 그리고 아까 사칭 가그 파트너께서 말씀하셨듯이 판매 연계, 요것은 이제 GST에 관련된 건데, 대부분의 주에서 이 판매 연계 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있습니다. 자본 연계나 지출 연계의 경우에는 큰 비중을 차지를 하고 있지 않지만 세일즈 링크드는 굉장히 큰 비중을 차지하고 있으며, 인도의 보통 90% 이상의 주에서 이 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있습니다. 이거에 관해서 말씀을 드리자면은 GST 비용을 주정부에 납부할 때 일부가 캐시백 또는 환급을 받을 수 있는 제도입니다. 그래서 이 환급을 받을 수 있는 퍼센테이지가 상당히 큰데요. 약 70%에서 100%까지 전부 환급을 받을 수 있습니다. 이것은 당연히 이제 주별로 퍼센테이지는 좀 차이가 있을 수 있습니다. 그리고 마지막으로 기타 부분에서 통관 단일 창구 제도를 도입을 해서 훨씬 더 이제 간소화하고 시간과 비용을 줄일 수 있으며, 이 통관 단일 창구를 통해서 만약에 델리에 있다 하더라도 뭄바이 쪽으로 통관을 신청을 할 수가 있는 그 정도 이제 혜택 이점이 있습니다. 그리고 두 번째로 커스터마이즈 패키지라고 이제 말씀을 하셨는데, 요것은 투자 총액에 따라서 맞춤형 패키지를 각 주에서 제공을 할 수 있습니다. 그래서 아까 예를 들었듯이 삼성과 기아이 같은 경우에서 각 주별로 이제 기준을 둔 투자 금액이 있는데, 예를 들어서 2억 달러의 투자를 하게 되면, 2억 달러 이상의 투자를 하게 되면은 그 투자를 하는 기업은 그 주정부에게 접근하여서 어떤 추가 혜택을 우리에게 맞춰줄 수 있느냐, 원하는 혜택을 요구를 할 수도 있고, 협의나 합의를 통해서 더 많은 혜택들을 받을 수 있습니다. 요것을 이제 맞춤형 패키지라고 할 수 있습니다. 그리고 그 외로는 이제 토지 등록 비용이라든지 토지 전환 비용, 토지의 용도 전환 비용들을 양호받거나 면제 또는 환급을 받을 수 있으며, 각 산업 분야별로, 투자한 산업 분야별로 요거에 대한 세금 또한 또 이제 면제나 환급 받을 수 있게 되어 있습니다. 그래서 각 주정부에서 이런 인센티브를 제공을 할 때 주요로 고려하는 점이 들어오는 업체 기업의 이제 위치가 되겠고, 그 다음이 투자 금액. 그래서 투자 금액에 따라서 자본 연계 인센티브를 제공을 할 수 있기 때문에 맞춤형 패키지나, 그렇기 때문에 투자 금액을 많이 고려를 하고, 그 다음에 또 들어오면서 공장이 설립되면서 얼마만큼의 고용을 창출할 수 있는지, 이런 것과 또 제조 산업인지 또 어떤 산업인지 그 분야에 대해서 상당히 많이 고려를 하면서 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있습니다.
So on this slide, I will not take much time, but would like to primarily mention about the high quality infrastructure availability in India. While India has already in the last many years developed a lot of infrastructure, but the government is mindful of improving that infrastructure every year. And as per a national infrastructure pipeline or plan which has been announced by the government, they intend to spend $1.4 trillion, which is a huge spend in the next 5 years on sectors like energy, road, railways, urban transport, ports, in order to develop the infrastructure further. Because having a good infrastructure is one of the basic requirements for any manufacturing entity to have a good supply chain and logistics facility. And therefore, the government is mindful and improving the infrastructure every day. The government is also working on developing 5 industrial corridors between important cities within India, and this will again lead to further development around these corridors and setting up of industries on the periphery of these corridors will be beneficial for manufacturing companies.
이 슬라이드 관련해서는 높은 수준의 산업 인프라라고 이제 저희가 말씀을 드리고 있는 것이 이미 개발과 발전을 또 하고 있지만 지금 현재에도 산업 관련해서는 인프라가 구축이 된 곳들이 꽤 있습니다. 그래서 국가산업회랑 개발 및 구축 신탁, NICDIT를 통해서 산업과 인프라 통합 발전이 가능한 5대 산업회랑을 지금 건설을 한 곳도 있고 하고 있는 곳도 진행할 계획인 곳도 있습니다. 이 5대 산업회랑 같은 경우에는 한국의 예를 들어 경부고속도로 건설과 비슷한 것이라고 생각하시면 되겠습니다. 이 산업회랑이 완성됨에 따라서 그 주변으로 스마트 도시라든지 산업도시 그리고 기관들이 들어오면서 더 발전할 것으로 예측을 하고 있고 인도 정부에서는 인프라 관련해서 굉장히 많은 투자와 지출을 할 것으로 계획을 하였습니다. 2019년도에서 2025년까지 인프라에 약 1조 4천억 달러를 투입할 것이라고 목표를 세워놨으며 이제 진행을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 국가 인프라 파이프라인 NIP를 구축하여 에너지, 도로, 도시, 철도 등의 인도의 인프라 예상에 인프라의 자본에 이제 지출을 하기로 계획을 짜왔습니다.
So while we all understand that one of the attractiveness of India is a huge domestic market in India, but at the same time, India is also a very good destination to set up a manufacturing unit to act as an export hub. So the exports from India have been consistently increasing year on year and were $500 billion in financial year 20. The primary export countries from India are US, Europe, and other Asian nations. In fact, as per press reports, Yangwan Corporation decided to set up a manufacturing unit in India and has negotiated an incentive scheme with the state government of Telangana. The primary focus of that manufacturing unit, again, as per available information, is for exporting out of India and not only targeted at the domestic market. Therefore, the message is that even if you want to set up a manufacturing unit in India and the domestic market is not big enough for your product, but given the low cost of investment because of various incentives that are available, you should consider India as an export hub and set up a manufacturing here for exporting to countries outside India.
아까 위에서도 말했듯이 인도는 글로벌 수출 허브로서의 역할을 충분히 하고 있으며 또 발전을 하고 있습니다. 이번 회계연도 4월부터 3일까지가 이제 인도에서는 정해져 있으며 이 표에 보시다시피 2018-19년도에 536 빌리언을 달성을 하였고 주요 수출 국가로는 미국, 싱가포르, 홍콩, 중동의 아랍에미레이트, 중국 그리고 유럽까지 해서 지리적인 이점도 유럽과 미국, 아시아, 중동, 아프리카까지 갖고 있으며 또 예를 들어서 한국의 영왕 기업 같은 하였고 내수 시장뿐만 아니라 수출까지 같이 할 수 있도록 하였습니다. 왜냐하면 이제 인도 주에서 텔랑나가 주에서도 인센티브를 제공을 하고 노동력이 사실 이제 동남아 같은 경우보다 훨씬 싸기 때문에 그거에 대해서 투자 대비로 지출이 좀 줄게 되고 수출로 인해서 더 많은 소득을 챙길 수 있을 거라고 예상하였습니다.
Moving to some of the sectors that are really attractive to invest in the Indian market. In this slide, what we've done is we have highlighted some of the new age sectors. And in the next slide, we have covered some of the traditional sectors where a lot of foreign investment is taking place in the Indian market. So due to a lot of the incentive schemes for semiconductors and other electronic components, along with mobile manufacturing, a lot of FDI is proposed to take place in the next few years, where a lot of big companies have already moved to set up manufacturing facilities in India. Considering a lot of ancillary industries would be required to service these mobile manufacturers, including Samsung and Apple, which are shifting a large part of their manufacturing in the Indian market, there will be a lot of ancillary industry they're part of their supply chain that would be looking to set up their individual manufacturing units in India as well. The government over the last 1 year, 12 months, I would say, has been trying to create a strong EV push, electric vehicles, along with charging stations in the Indian market. And the main reason was due to a high pollution in a few cities in India, the government is trying to create an ecosystem where a large part of these EVs are pushed into the market. You already have a few state governments that are providing incentives for purchase of EV vehicles, and it is likely that more and more states are going to try and push this infrastructure along with EVs to come into the market. So over the next 12 months to 24 months, we see a lot of tenders coming into the Indian market for the installation of charging stations, as that is one of the basic requirements for EVs into India. To give you an example, recently, Qsum, which is a Korean bus EV company, has committed a large investment of 500 million by setting up a manufacturing facility in the Indian market, and that is only for providing electrical buses to the government. So they've already spoken to the state governments, and they intend to set up their manufacturing facilities in the next couple of years. They've already received one order for supplying, and post that they would be having their own manufacturing facility. The government has also tried to create a push in the defense sector by increasing the FDI from 49% to 74%, where you require no permission now to set up defense manufacturing into the Indian market. Technology and innovation is one of India was already considered as an outsourcing hub, and a large number of IT companies already existed. But due to new technologies, 5G, no restriction in FDI, you already have a large number of global players that have entered the Indian market. Where the likes of Google and Facebook have already committed over $15 billion to the Indian market, investing in various sectors that are related to their businesses.
그래서 이제 주요 산업 분야 기회에 대해서 이제 뉴에이지 산업 분야로 이제 총 4가지로 나눌 수 있는데요. 첫 번째는 전자제품, 특히 스마트폰과 전자 소비재 부품에 관련해서 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다. 거대 스마트폰 및 전자 소비재 부품 시장으로 이미 삼성, 애플, 비보, 오포 같은 글로벌 기업들이 인도로 많이 들어와 있으며 공급망 이전을 하였고, 특히나 핸드폰 같은 경우에는 사용자 및 구독자들이 급격하게 증가하고 있는 추세입니다. 또한 아직까지도 핸드폰을 사용하고 있지 않은 많은 비율의 국민들이 있기 때문에 앞으로도 굉장히 커다란 잠재적인 시장이라고 볼 수 있습니다. 그 다음으로 말씀드릴 수 있는 것이 배터리 제조 및 전기 자동차 관련 산업인데요. 환경 오염이 인도가 심각하기 때문에 전기 자동차 사용을 정부에서 강력하게 추진을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 여러 가지 전기 자동차 및 버스라든지 이런 것들을 지금 생산을 하고 제조를 하기 위해서 많은 노력을 하고 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있으며, 심지어 이제 각 많은 주에서 전기 자동차 구입을 할 때 보조금이나 혜택을 제공을 하고 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 전기 자동차 시장과 또 전기 자동차가 늘어날수록 필요한 충전소 시장 제조가 굉장히 앞으로도 증가할 것이라고 생각하고 있습니다. 그 다음으로는 방위산업 제조인데요. 인도 정부에서 국내에서 생산하는 방위 장비들에 대해 도입을 먼저 선호하기 때문에 최근에 49%에서 74%까지 FDI가 자동 승인 루트를 통해서 할 수 있기 때문에 방위 산업체들이 인도에 들어와서 같이 생산을 하는 것을 인도 정부에서는 기대를 하고 있습니다. 그리고 기술과 혁신 분야에 대해서는 100% 자동 승인이 나 있기 때문에, 그리고 인도가 IT 관련하여서 상당히 세계적으로 유명한 국가이기도 하고 제한 자체가 없기 때문에 많은 기업들이 여기로 들어오고 있는 상황입니다. 구글 같은 경우에도 인도에 더 추가 투자를 하고 R&D 센터를 건설하겠다는 계획을 발표한 적이 있습니다.
Some of the other sectors that I would like to highlight. So chemicals has been expanding into the Indian market due to a lot of factories being shut in China due to high pollution. So chemical has been growing at a compounded rate of 17% for the last many years. We see a lot of chemical companies moving to the Indian market to shift part of their supply chain to India. Consumer good, considering India is already a high consumption domestic economy, you already have a large number of multinational companies that have their own manufacturing facilities as well as that are incorporated in the Indian market due to high private consumption increasing in India. You have over 500 million people in the middle class whose incomes are to rise in the coming years, which will only increase this particular sector. So white goods remains, including fast-moving consumer goods, remains a very hot sector in India for investment. So government also, textiles, government has been promoting textiles for the purpose of export. In India, there's a national textile policy that is supposed to be out this year, which will provide more, which will lay out the incentives that will be offered to this sector. Auto, as you would already know, is a already a large number of companies in India. Hyundai is now the second largest automobile manufacturer in India. In terms of their market share as well, they are the second largest behind Suzuki in India, having a market share of over about 25% in the Indian market. They have also now invested more in their manufacturing facilities, and they are now creating India as a global export hub, where they are already exporting 500,000 cars to overseas market from India itself. So apart from that, you also have the pharmaceutical sector where India is a leader and the government has brought about incentives along with steel, as considering that the steel consumption in India is bound to increase at a growth of about 8% CAGR in the coming years.
네, 인도 위에 있던 신산업 분야 외에도 다른 분야에 대해서 설명드리겠습니다. 일단 먼저 화학 분야에 대해서는 높은 수익률을 기대할 수 있으며 지난 3년간 17%의 연평균 성장률을 기록하였고 앞으로도 그 성장률을 유지할 것으로 기대를 하고 있습니다. 중국 내에서 공장 폐쇄 및 배출 규범 정책의 변경에 따라서 공급망 전환이 필요한 것으로 생각이 고려되고 있습니다. 그 다음으로 소비재 시장입니다. 2025년까지 연평균 성장률이 9에서 11%일 것으로 예상을 하고 있으며 낮은 인플레이션과 민간 소비와 농촌 소득 증가가 뒷받침이 되어 꾸준히 성장을 할 것으로 생각되고 있습니다. 다음 섬유산업입니다. 섬유산업은 인도에서 주력으로 수출하는 산업 중에 하나입니다. 그래서 관련하여 다양한 인센티브를 제공을 하고 있고 효성이라든지 이랜드 같은 한국 기업들도 인도에 들어와서 섬유산업에서 뛰어들고 있습니다. 그리고 2020년도 올해 아직 발표는 되지 않았지만 국가 섬유 정책을 발표할 예정입니다. 이에 따라서 가이드라인이라든지 앞으로 추가 혜택 이런 것들이 어떻게 나올 수 있는지 기대를 하고 있는 상황입니다. 그 다음 자동차 및 자동차 부품 산업에 관련해서는 현대는 인도에서 두 번째로 큰 자동차 제조업체가 되었고 1위는 마루티 수즈키입니다. 마루티 수즈키는 거의 가장 먼저 들어왔고 저가 자동차를 타겟으로 해서 인도에서 굉장히 높은 점유율을 갖고 있는 상황입니다. 그리고 자동차 산업에 관련해서는 숙련된 노동자들을 낮은 임금을 통해서 고용을 할 수가 있으며 R&D 현대, 수즈키, 기아 같은 이제 탄탄한 R&D 센터를 보유하고 있기 때문에 또 저비용의 철강 생산에 의해서 뒷받침되어서 성장을 꾸준히 하고 있습니다. 그리고 다양한 글로벌 기업들이 이미 인도에 진출을 하여서 그 입지를 확장하고 시장 점유율을 높이는 데 노력 중입니다. 그리고 제약과 의약 산업에 관련하여서는 파마 비전 2020이라는 인도 정부의 목표가 세워졌는데요. 의약품 제조의 글로벌 리더가 되는 것을 목표로 하고 있습니다. 인도는 이제 복제약품에 대해서 이미 전 세계적으로 굉장히 유명한 상황이고 그 복제약품들이 원래의 약품보다 성능이 비슷하거나 조금 떨어지더라도 가격은 굉장히 크게 낮은 상태로 판매되고 있기 때문에 아주 거대한 시장을 지금 인도 내에서도 구축을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 인도 제약 산업은 향후 몇 년 안에 1,000억 달러에 이를 것으로 전망되고 있습니다. 철강 산업에 대해서 말씀드리자면은 제2의 철강 생산국으로 국가 철강 정책에 따르면 2030에서 31년쯤에는 3억 톤의 생산량을 예상을 하고 있다고 합니다. 인도 정부는 추가적으로 철강뿐만 아니라 방산과 석탄 분야에 대해서도 완화를 계획을 하고 있습니다. 아직까지 정확하게 발표나 된 것은 아니지만 일단 계획을 하고 있는 것으로 나타나 있습니다.
As we are running a little short on time, I'll just try and go through the next few slides a little quickly so that we can move to the Q&A session. So some of the case studies that we have highlighted of a few companies that have already moved to shift their manufacturing chain from China to India. So you have Wistron, which is an Apple contract manufacturer. They have applied for the incentive scheme of mobile manufacturing. You have Pegatron, which is also Apple's second largest contract manufacturer. They have also applied for the production incentive scheme by the central government. You have Lava, which is moving out their operations from China to India, and they've already committed an investment of over 70 million by applying again for the incentive scheme. So considering that the government, the government is trying to create a push so that companies move their supply chain, and there's already talks that the government will be providing schemes to other sectors as well, with chemical being one of the next sectors after pharma in relation to this product linked incentive scheme. You have Von Valix, which is a German footwear brand. They've committed an investment of 15 million for moving their supply chain, part of their supply chain from China to India. A couple of other a few notable ones. You have Samsung, which is now closed down their 3-decade-old smartphone factory in China, and they are moving out to India by setting up a new plant. We have various global MNCs, including Microsoft, including Cisco, that are moving out to the Indian market.
Okay.
Moving on to some of the inbound transactions.
So while you may have heard a few of them, so Reliance has a entity called Geo Platforms, which is basically their telecom arm. So it received close to $20 billion in investment in the last few months. Given that it was a period of COVID, so it is a huge investment and confidence shown by investors like Google, Facebook, in the future plans for India. Similarly, Walmart also invested another 1.2 billion in Flipkart, in addition to the 16 billion they invested in 2018. So this is just to give a broad flair of the investments coming into India, despite the slowdown on account of COVID. So the economy has been still going strong, and there is a lot of expectation from the foreign investors that in the years to come, India will grow many-fold and is one of the best investment destinations. The next couple of slides again are more on the inbound investments into India. These are by Korean companies. So I will not take too much time. So Edison Motors, Chirag already spoke about. Kia Motors also we discussed already. Samsung, Yangwon, Hyundai Motors. So all Korean companies who have invested in India in the past and have been investing for long, like Samsung and Hyundai Motors. Let's go to the next. Similarly, Hyosung, which has been executing mostly EPC projects in India in the past, last year set up a textile unit, a spandex manufacturing factory in Maharashtra. East TC Electronics, again, as per recent press reports, is expected to invest $16 million in a unit in Pune. Samsung, again, as per press reports, is expected to invest around $75 million to set up a manufacturing unit in the state of Uttar Pradesh. GSENC has entered into a joint venture with Renew Power in relation to a solar power project in India. So all in all, the investment from Korea is spread across sectors. So it is not just limited to one. So we have investments coming in solar power, we have investments in electronic components, textile, electric vehicle, and so on. So, Korean companies have shown immense faith in India's systems, and we believe it will continue in the future, given India's push for becoming a manufacturing base for foreign companies wanting to invest here.
So it is not only manufacturing, but you have a lot of Korean funds, well-established investment funds that are investing in the new age sectors in the Indian market. Samsung has set up their own venture capital fund to invest in new age sectors. You have Kia and Hyundai who've proposed to pledge one of their largest investments in Ola, which is a ride-sharing company. You have Mirai, who's been in India for a long period of time, and they have set up their own private equity fund and venture fund for investing in Indian new age startups, including grocery delivery, including fashion. You have including logistics. So you have Redwood that invested as an investment capital fund in a healthcare company. So these are some of the examples. You have Smilegate that have set up their own investment fund to invest in the Indian market in new age startups. So these are some of the examples that we've laid out of a lot of Korean companies that are including Korean funds, investment funds that are looking India market as an opportunity in the coming years, considering the high tensions as well between India and China currently. This is an opportunity for a lot of other countries to grab this opportunity to enter the Indian market, considering that India is placing a lot of restrictions for Chinese investment in the Indian market. So just moving on to any questions that anyone may have.